At WellFed Photography, the word client is becoming a thing of the past. We are now happily welcoming members to enjoy having their family histories captured so that they can have gorgeous pieces of family art to look back on and treasure in this lifetime and by future generations. If you'd like to learn more about becoming a member, you can visit our website at wellfedphotography.com/membership or download our membership brochure in the link provided. Now, we hope you enjoyed the episode. Hi, everyone. This is Ariana from WellFed Photography, and I'm joined by one of our previous clients, David. David, it's so wonderful to have you on today. I was really hoping to have some clients come on the show to share about their experiences, but also we have had requests to have more men on the show. And also, with this coming out in June, it gives us an opportunity to chat about fatherhood. So I'm delighted to have you on the show. And would you like to let viewers and listeners know a bit more about who you are?
Sure, Ariana. I'm David. I'm a retired civil servant and happily retired. I enjoyed my work, but delighted to be out of it. I have lots of interests, I suppose, particularly around history and reading, as you can guess from the books behind me. Very keen on photography and particularly interested in travel. And in the last couple of years, we managed to get a house in the south of Spain, a little town called Salobreña, which I know you visited, Ariana, and that's become a new focus for our lives. Obviously, COVID has going to put a temporary pause on that, but we're hoping this summer things will open up again and we'll be heading back to sunny Salobreña.
Absolutely. And we are thinking the same. We're like, when can we get back to Spain? So we need the sunshine. We need the beach in our lives. That would just brighten everything for sure. And actually, I'm going to go off track. This is something I didn't think of ahead of time. And that is, you've also visited the southeastern United States, which is where I'm from originally. So curious to know what your thoughts were around visiting.
Yeah, well, in fact, that was really where we got to know my son's friend Garrett, your husband. We went to, as I mentioned, I'm interested in history, as indeed is Colin. So we're both Civil War buffs. So we went to New Orleans, or Nolans, as Nolans, as the locals call it. Then we got a train across to Jacksonville, Amtrak. That was great fun. And then we stayed in Savannah and Charleston, and then up into Raleigh, and then Richmond, Virginia, where we have some friends. And it was very enjoyable. The people were very friendly, a very laid back kind of vibe to the place, particularly Nolans, but same Savannah, which is quite quirky. Charleston was a peach of a city. I really, really loved Charleston. And then Raleigh in North Carolina. I say people were friendly. We were staying in cheap motels and stuff like that, driving up the I-95, basically visiting various plantations and battlefield sites along the way, and it was very enjoyable. There was, I remember, again in the Confederacy, as you'll be well aware, the Civil War is still very present. And I remember our guide in Charleston, I think, saying, when people talk about the war, they mean the Civil War or the War of Northern Aggression, as some style it. If they mean anything else like World War I or World War II, they'll tell you, but the war is that. And it was, but it was really interesting. Again, I remember talking to I think it was in Virginia, talked to some neighbors of our friends, and I was saying I was interested in the Civil War, and one of them said there weren't nothing civil about it. So it's and obviously in recent times with all of the stuff about reevaluating the prominence given to statues from the Confederate Army and so on. I think if I was taking the trip now, I'd be looking at things with different eyes. But it was Um, it was very interesting. Again, in Richmond, I know there are two museums. One, well, lots of museums, I'm sure, but one is the Museum of the Confederacy, which is the old one in the Confederate White House, and the other is the Museum of the Civil War. And interestingly, the Museum of the Confederacy, there is no mention at all of slavery. It's all the Beau Sabreur, Jeb Stuart, Stonewall Jackson, Bobby Lee, and the Lost Cause, all of that stuff. I mean, I could talk about the American Civil War for hours, so just warn you on that. Whereas in the Museum of the Civil War, it covers stuff like the Underground Railway, the plight of the slaves, the the whole kind of social conflict. And again, it's a much, the first museum is great fun, and it was the first one I visited many years ago. The Museum of the Civil War, it's much more thoughtful exploration, and again, it's in keeping with the times that we do need to kind of look back at maybe the simple colors that we painted the past in the past, and that we need to look at more nuanced examination. And just as I say, it's something I'm very interested in. My Civil War books are all over in that corner, and there's a lot of them.
Well, I'm glad you at least found people in the South to be friendly and happy and a bit laid back, because I knew when I left Georgia that if I was going to live in another country, I needed to live in a place where I also was coming into a bit of friendliness and warmth. So I found that in Ireland and have since made it my home. As you know, been here 8 years. So it's a happy pairing, and it's interesting how some of the culture is similar in certain ways, obviously very different in others. But I'm glad that you enjoyed your time in the South. And so I suppose moving on to go back to our original line of thinking here was around being a client of Well-Fed Photography and what your experiences were like. And it was actually Colm, who you mentioned, your son, who purchased the photo session as a gift for you and your wife, Mary. And I thought that was lovely. It was a lovely, thoughtful thing for him to do. And then you have the benefit now of the beautiful photographs that you get to look back on. But I'm curious to know, for you as a client, what it was like to, have someone come into your home. Originally, we had planned to be in the garden, but then there was a bit of rain, so we also had photographs in the house. So what was that like for you to experience?
It was very interesting. And I mean, obviously, we know you through Garrett, so there wasn't the sense of a stranger coming along, which was very nice. But really, and don't take this the wrong way, for the purposes of the photo shoot, you were kind of invisible, which I think is very much a sign of a true professional, because basically we were playing with our two granddaughters, Sive and Isolde, who were, I think, 4 and 2 at the time, and last summer, and played with them in the garden, and they were showing it off to Granny and Granddad, and we were picking them up, or putting them down, turning them upside down, all those kind of things, and you were very friendly. You give a smile or comment, but you were completely invisible. There was no sense of an artificial staged photo shoot, and that was great. In fact, in some ways, we felt we were ignoring you. But grandparents, when they put in front of the grandchildren, all other priorities drop, all social graces drop. So basically, it was us with our grandchildren and our two granddaughters, and that was great fun. And again, one of the things, like, it was kind of one of those pieces of serendipity. There were some photos of Isolde, who at that stage was just toddling, really, and there was a coal scuttle in our living room, which we didn't realize had wheels on it, but Isolde was holding onto it, and then she started to push it, and she was delighted with herself that she could push trundle all across the room, and then she'd hit a wall, go and so a doting grandparent would turn her around, and then she'd go trundle up to the other end of the room, and she was delighted with that for about 20 minutes. And it was one of those things where even maybe 3 months before, she wouldn't have been steady enough on her feet to do that. And maybe 3 months later, she wouldn't have needed the support. But just, it was one of those things that, I'd say, just pure serendipity. But like the photos of her with a very happy, very determined look as she pushes the coal scuttle up and down the room were really wonderful. And as I say, it was just that moment in time, that, while you meanwhile were kind of, putting yourself behind chairs or behind curtains, all while very heavily pregnant, I should add. And, but completely the fly on the wall type of thing, which I think certainly, like, I'm keen on photography myself, and I always prefer capturing a slice of life. Okay, there's landscape and monuments and stuff like that. That's a different thing, but I like the slice of life as it happens. And there was that real sense when we got the photos, because we went out to visit you in your home for the photo reveal, and that was great fun. We were just, Mary and I were just blown away by the photos, and each one we say, oh, that's amazing, that's wonderful, and then the next one, and obviously, I mean, we're biased grandparents, so any photos of our grandchildren were going to be much appreciated. But it was, but then afterwards, we got a little album, and in fact, we actually went and got two. So we have one of them in our house in Celebrania. So anytime we're over there, we can look at that, and that's great. But we also got a couple of prints. One was a photo montage, and the other is a print. And one of them is in the hall, so we see it every time we're going out of the house, every time we're coming back in, and we look at it. And the other is in the kitchen, right above the kitchen table. So again, virtually every day, one or Mary or myself, or indeed Colin, would say, those are very cute children there, aren't they? And we agree and compliment ourselves on the good grandparenting that is evident in the pictures. So it really is something that we get joy from every single day. We mightn't look at the book every day, but many days. But having the prints on the wall, and certainly that's something that, doing it again, I would definitely think about. Great photos are okay, but if you don't look at them, you see, you can have 1,000 photos on your phone, but even the most belligerent of grandparents won't be able to hold people captive for more than about 5 minutes and flick through photos. But that again is just flicking through a photo, which actually is pausing to look at it on a screen, in print, or in print on the wall, is it's a different experience. And there's more of an emotional response or echo or something like that. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of we feel that there is a lot more that you get out of it with the physical photos.
Oh, that just makes it just makes me so happy to hear that, because that's really what I do it for, so that you have that time together during the photo session, but so that you also have those micro moments, or the 30 seconds here, the 60 seconds there, or sitting down to look through the album. So it all compounds, it's not just the photo session, it's all the moments afterwards that are sparked, the moments of joy and happiness that are sparked from seeing the photographs. So it's wonderful to hear that feedback. And I'd say, being the lover of books that you are, and being able to physically hold things, it has to feel nice as well to be able to sit down with an album versus like flipping through your phone. I just think they're two totally different experiences. Would you agree?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, like as I say, I'm a keen photographer. I have lots of photos up on Flickr, between kind of like travels and family snaps and various things. But um, the actual physical album is a much superior experience. In fact, when I was thinking about this interview, one of the saddest things I ever heard was in relation to Chernobyl, uh, the nuclear reaction in Ukraine. I actually went on a visit to Chernobyl a number of years ago, which was fascinating. But people were told to get out of their houses and they were going to be gone for 3 days. So just basically brought a change of clothes, got on the bus in the square and headed off. And they were never allowed back. And the thing that, and okay, it was a whole reflection on kind of Soviet times and command economy and everything else. But people did try to come back to their house, to their apartments, which were all, highly radioactive and everything else. But it was for things like their wedding albums, washing machines, clothes, those kind of things you could get again. But and this is again well before online photographs and Dropbox or Flickr or whatever. But not losing your wedding album, that just struck me as, okay. In the grand scheme of things, there were many, many tragedies, many deaths. But that struck me as particularly poignant loss, and it's because sorry, I'm rabbiting on a bit, but the importance of kind of the being able to hold physical photos, it just can't be underestimated. I mean, online storage is great, and there are all sorts of advantages to it, but the emotional response is quite different with a physical album.
I totally agree with you. And the other great thing about having physical prints is we were able to also kind of bring in a bit of your own history with Colum and Kieran, your sons, with your granddaughters. So they were able to throw on some pajamas that Colum and Kieran had,
yeah.
and to be able to take photographs in those as well. And so I think that was a really fun part of photographs too, and how you can take a bit of history and you can also relive and recreate it or make it new and enjoy it again. So what was it like to be able to get the photograph of them in the pajamas that you'd also had photographs of years ago?
Yeah, that was great. It was the Bosco pajamas, and that was great fun. And getting them into the pajamas was there was a lot of wriggling and everything else. And while it would have been nice to have had a more pose photo of them, we got what we got, and that's very much what the day was about. But it was great fun. And again, I know a while ago, I guess when Sive, our oldest granddaughter, was just a tot, Sharon put her in a little jumper that my mum had knit for Kieran, and I was amazed at just how emotional I got. I teared up with just seeing something and remembering, the love my mum put into knitting it for her grandchild. So that was kind of, again, it's one of those things where, and it's not that you try to dress your children or your grandchildren as models of another time, but just occasional echoes like that can be very, very moving. And you just have to kind of, if you capture it, great. And it is good fun, and as I say, it does have those echoes across time as well, which again is one of those things that like with the photos, and I'm sure you found it's like black and white photos are always so much more evocative and more timeless than color photos. I mean, I love color photos too, but there's something about a good black and white photo is just absolutely timeless and classic.
I feel the same. Are there any photographs of your own that really stand out in your memory, as in, you mentioned having a love of photography yourself? Are there any that stick out in your mind as favorites that you've taken?
Let's see. Yes, again, thinking. There's one of Kieran and Colin. We were in our first house in Walkinstown, and Colin was a toddler. He was in a little walker thing with wheels and a little seat, and Kieran was behind him pushing him. And it's great fun. Colin, he's excited, a little bit nervous, but his big brother is there minding him, and that's kind of a lovely photo looking back on it. The and again, there's another one with Kieran on when we brought Colin home from the hospital, and Kieran is the big brother, all of three, with his arm around his little brother. And again, that's just kind of an amazing kind of all the memories. And then I've one of the two of them on the day of Kieran's wedding, obviously, much old, but again, like I kind of juxtaposed those photos with another one of them in the Isle of Man, where they're holding swords. The Isle of Man is a great place for a family holiday, by the way. It's really well worth going. Everything is quite small and quite intimate, but Colin was holding a sword and it's kind of taller than him, and he would have been maybe 6 and Kieran 9, something like that. But things like that where you've got the chance, and I've kind of put them up on Facebook or whatever, of kind of brothers through the ages, and it's it's lovely. It's lovely seeing the relationship between them and the big brother minding the little brother and stuff like that. I mean, obviously, things are different now. It's quite a different relationship between them, and it's lovely to see that. But it's nice having those photos that capture kind of your little milestones along the way, and you're not thinking of this as this is a milestone photo I'm taking. This is a snap, and I'll take it. But then keeping it and going back afterwards and saying, "Oh yeah, let's there are kind of themes or whatever to pull out, and let's show those off together." And it's okay. It can be embarrassing for the lads, but that's that's one of the roles for parents and grandparents.
I love what you mentioned there about, you weren't taking the photo with this idea that it was a milestone, but looking back as time progressed, that kind of was what it was. And that's so much of what I try to do for families as well, because I think sometimes you don't realize when you're immersed in it, especially when they're small, you don't realize how much things will change eventually, because it just feels so all encompassing in the moment. But I love what you've shared there. And I'm wondering, because Father's Day is coming up soon, do you have any favorite Father's Day moments or father memories?
Okay, yeah, well, maybe not specifically Father's Day, but father memories. Yeah, actually, I was thinking 2 of them. One is when Kieran was 3 or 4, and we went over to Birmingham. I have the whole pile of cousins and aunts and uncles over in Birmingham. We went over with my dad, and we went to visit them. But this kind of echoed a trip I had taken with my dad when I was about that age. My dad went over for, I think it was a family wedding or something, and I came along as a last minute addition. Again, back in the day when you're going on the boat, if you had a toddler, you just brought him along. No worries about advanced booking or anything like that. But it was lovely, kind of bringing Kieran. No, we flew to Birmingham or London, I can't remember where, and hired a car and drove to visit various cousins. But it was lovely having that kind of sense of something that I had done at that age, and I was now doing with my son and my father. And another, I suppose, memory that I particularly enjoy is Colin was about, I don't know, 9 or 10, and it was his birthday. So we bought in Lidl or somewhere these grotesque, huge, big super soaker water pistols, and we brought himself and his mates, maybe a dozen mates, to the Ivy Gardens. And basically, a sight of a dozen small boys with these huge water pistols running around, squirting each other. I remember, in fact, there was a courting couple on the grass near one of the fountains. And I said, "You're perfectly welcome to stay here, but just be warned, there are going to be a number of small boys with large water pistols, so you might want to move on." And they did rather rapidly, you know. But it was great fun, and it was definitely one of those, you know, he still remembers it as one of his best birthdays ever, you know. And at the end, rather insanely, I agreed they could all shoot at me. I mean, I'd got some collateral damage, crossfire, but they all lined up and basically firing squad at me, and I was absolutely saturated. Now we live not too far from the Ivy Gardens, as you know, but even so, I squelched home. But it was you know, and they you know they were all pretty soaked. Some of them had kind of climbed into the fountains to, you know, test just how waterproof their runners were, in the way small boys do. But it was you know, but it was good. I really enjoyed it, and it was just, you know. Then we kind of came back to the house. They all had changed clothes there, and then there was, you know, party cake and candles and all that jazz. But like they were all basically wiped out at that stage, you know, as was I.
Yes. And as a grandfather now, do you get celebrated doubly because, you know, you're a father and a grandfather, or is it kind of the same as it's always been?
I suppose it's different. I mean, basically, once grandchildren arrive, everything is seen through their perspective. So, you know, their birthdays are the most important birthdays. Their you know, Christmas concerts or whatever are the most important things. So, but it's like yesterday. We're kind of now going through our vaccination period, so we met the girls with their dad in Imma, and it was the first time we were able to give them a hug since Christmas, and that felt really special. I being able to hold their hands and then pick them up and stuff like that, and that was just really nice, you know. And it's you know, okay, my two sons were there as well, but like, you know, you know, they could have been kind of dressed in clown costumes for all I would have noticed. You know, basically it was just watching with you know, Simon Insult as they, you know, kind of had stuff, or, you know, jumped up and down, or kicked off their Wellingtons, or, you know, played hide and seek. Or again, it's all the games. The old games are the best games. So Grandad pretends to fall asleep like this, and then they say, "Wake up!" And I go, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa!" And you know, like we've been doing that. I know my dad played that game with my lads, so it's a sort of a secret passed on grandfather to grandfather, and like it's, you know, and like we've been doing this with the girls for years now, and it's the old jokes are the best ones. They love repeating them, and you know, there's not, as you know, with small children, you know, if a game is good the first time, it's got to be good the 17th time.
Yes.
You know, the fact that the parents' attention has wandered off, and you're conscious you need to do something else, but that's, you know, again, I suppose one of the things, the differences between parent and grandparent is that I know, like, say, sometimes we've picked up the girls from their nursery, and we bring them home going through Imma, and there'll be puddles to be stamped in, there'll be twigs to be picked up, and it can take us an hour to get home, whereas Karen and Sharon will do it in 15 minutes. And again, I remember when we were collecting our own lads from the nursery, you know, you'd be tired after a day in work. You're getting home, you're thinking about, okay, I have to get the dinner on, I have to get them changed, get them fed, if there's homework to be done. All the chores of the day are very much in your head, you know, so that like getting them home is just a task, and that you endure with as much expedition as you can. Whereas as a grandparent, it's pure quality time, you know. And if they want to stamp in that puddle, you know, that's fine. And if you want to look at that twig and is it like that twig there? And like those are kind of magical moments. And I know we've had a request from the parents. Is there any chance we could get them home in under an hour and a half? Because they do have to get them fed and put to bed and everything else. So so you got to work around that. But it's so as I say, it's more that it's quality time in a way that the pressures of life when you've got a young family. There are magic moments, but they're crowded out by life basically for an awful lot of the time. So the chance to stop and ponder, a pond or a twig is a luxury that parents rarely have.
That's really inspiring me to just take things a little bit slower when we can, kind of say, is this an emergency? How fast do we really need to get where we're going? Or can we take a few moments just to notice or compare or splash in a puddle or two? So thank you for sharing that. It's actually really got my wheels turning to inspire me to think of times when I can fit in just that bit of extra quality magic moments with them. Like you said, like that is where the magic is, just taking that time.
And sometimes, I mean, it's not always easy because, as I say, there are, there's calls with clients, there's, a casserole you've put on, there's all sorts of stuff going on. But, it's also possible to engineer it, not every day, but, even one day a week to sort of say, we'll take that little bit more time. Now, I say this now, as a parent with a young family, I never had that. But again, it's about thinking about it and being more conscious of the opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, I know you've mentioned it yourself that you love history, and I'm wondering, this is a question that I ask every guest when they come on the show, is what type of legacy do you hope to leave through the life that you're living?
Interesting. I suppose, thinking about this, conscious is something that my dad would have said, which was about that you try to make a difference. And so that could be, if you like, in the day to day, that, getting involved in parents' committees in the school or whatever, so that even if you're just stacking chairs at the end of the hall after a meeting, and obviously in current times, parent-teacher meetings or whatever are all very peculiar, but it's making a difference, getting involved in, I suppose, committees or projects or showing a bit of leadership. So things are better afterwards because you've been there. Now, it might be simply that the meetings ran a bit more quickly, decisions got made, fundraising got organized, the fun day in the school or whatever. So like those are all kind of transient. But if it's better transient rather than worse transient, that's still a value. But I suppose the other thing, and this is something we found very, very moving, is seeing how our children are, well, in this case, Kieran's bringing up his family. And because like small babies are very cute. Okay, even ordinary small babies that aren't my granddaughters are very cute. But you kind of know that as a grandparent. That's good. That's joy that's coming your way. But seeing your own children, how they are parenting, that's really very rewarding and very enriching. So I suppose, and again, seeing how Colin responds with small children, he's much more confident now than he would have been, say, when Sai was born. And I'm sure you've seen that when he's with your own children. And like that kind of, I think that's a really important legacy, that it's moving on after you. And it's, again, in some ways, it's 1,001 small transient things that are done. But the way Karen and Sharon are very caring and very, will go into detailed explanations and so on with the children, so that it's not just do this because I'm in a hurry type of thing. Like those are really nice. So, and again, as grandparents, we shamelessly claim the credit where we can, but you kind of feel, I probably contributed, in Mary, my wife, far more so, but that we've made a difference in terms of setting the example. And then when you see that example being carried on like that, that's very rewarding feeling, really.
Absolutely. Well, I can certainly say that having you and your family in my life has enriched my life, and I'm so looking forward to when we can actually see you again in person, maybe have some time in the garden just to sit and relax and chat. But I'm wondering, do you have any last words before we bring the episode to a close?
No, I suppose, very much around to like what we were saying at the beginning, that kind of like parenting and grandparenting is a real privilege. Grandparenting far more so. Had I realized grandkids were so much fun, I would have had them first, as the saying goes. But being able to capture it and having photos, from a very skilled professional like yourself, or these photos taken, but like, don't just take the photos and take them on your phone and then you change your phone or lose your phone and they're all gone, but actually take the trouble with, there are things like Snapfish or whatever, where you can download even 20 photos, 30 photos, and that's something that you'll have. And because it's about the memory. It's poetry is emotion recollected in tranquility, and looking at, if you like, experiencing the joy of parenting through looking at the photos. It's that kind of just extra depth, extra emotional depth, which is priceless.
Yes, and the gift that you're enjoying now through the photographs are the gifts that Simon and Zolt will get to continue to enjoy whenever one day you and Mary are no longer here. They'll have those photographs. They'll be able to have a look back to see just how loved and cared for they were and how much fun you did have together. So it's one of those things that gets to continue on, and it is.
Yeah, well, in fact, one of the things I did recently, sorry to cut in, was that I did an album using Snapfish, I think, where I took photos of Kieran and Colin, from my Flickr collection. So it's about 40 of the photos from them as toddlers right up to Kieran's wedding, and just to kind of give it to them now. And it was, in fact, but Sive and Isolt, particularly Sive, have enjoyed looking and saying, "Oh wow, that's that's Dad when he's little. That's Colin." So like, take those opportunities. Don't just wait for people clearing off the family albums afterwards.
Yes, I so agree. Well, thank you, David, for being here. Thank you for spending this time with us. It's been a pleasure. I've loved hearing in your own words about the experiences that you've had, and I look forward to when we get to see one another again.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, Ariana.
We hope you've enjoyed the show. Please feel free to leave a comment or a review to let us know what you loved about this episode and others like it. And if you'd like to be featured on our show, or if you know of someone who would be an amazing guest, get in touch with us at info@wellfedphotography.com and mention Living a Life Well Fed in the subject line.